morning. Welcome to Tel Aviv. We're going to talk about the most important element in the EV revolution, electric vehicle revolution, is the battery. And StoreDot is working on defeating the range anxiety, which is the problem of the driver not sure that he will have enough mileage to go. So the experience of the driver in like 100 years ago was roughly 5 minutes going and filling up the tank, right? So should we provide the same experience to the driver today? And we say yes, we should be able to do this. You don't need to charge overnight. If you charge overnight, it's inconvenient and people don't want to actually adopt an electric vehicle just because of this problem. If you look at what's happening with batteries and the prices, they're actually coming down dramatically. Today we are looking at roughly at $175 per kilowatt hour, and it's expected to go down 60% by 2030. And this is where, way after the hockey stick is going to hit, actually. So the electrification is a major problem where you are trying to get the perfect storm of the shared, connected, and autonomous driving. And fast charging is in the center of. So when you're doing slow charging, we are looking at 3 to 5 hours of charging, and we are working on the 5-minute charging. For that, you would need a much better infrastructure in order to enable this. Actually, up to 750 kilowatt of a charging station, which is very dramatic. So it's important to understand that in order to enable ultra-fast charging, this would only be possible with new battery technology. Okay? So in order to do this, we have assembled a team, experts in chemistry, in material science, data scientists. They are working on a new generation of lithium-ion battery. So this is still a lithium-ion battery, but with a new generation. So we are inventing materials that were never before, and these materials can actually revolutionize the world of batteries, because what we are trying to do is to get rid of the problem that graphite and lithium react together. And if you remember what happened to Note 7 as an example, this is something that can be a real safety concern. So in order to enable fast charging, we are taking out the graphite from the battery and introducing something that is very new. So we call this the flash battery technology, and this is the only technology that enables safe and real ultra-fast charging of the battery. So first of all, 5 minutes is what we are allowing the battery to be charged. And in those 5 minutes, it will be fully charged. So in order to do that, we need to add some organic materials that protect the nanoparticles of, let's say, tin, silicon, germanium. These are active materials that are known to have fast diffusion of the lithium ions into the anode. So in order to do this, we have an innovative formulation that is optimized for cycle life, energy density, and the safety of the battery. And then we are also working, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, about the production facility, which will actually allow us to scale this production, because there's going to be huge demand for batteries over time. So the team that we have assembled, and we are 110 people today here in Herzliya, this is organic chemistry, nanotechnology, and state-of-the-art data science that enables to work on all this data that is coming from the cyclers that are running charge and discharge of the batteries. So we're working in 6 teams. Each one is headed by a top scientist, a researcher. One is the anode, which is the most important when you charge. When you charge, all the ions of the lithium move into the anode, right? So we are reinventing how you insert the ions into the anode. Then you have the team of the cathode that needs to balance the charge and discharge with a high rate of charging of the anode. Electrolytes are also very important. This is the mechanism of how the ions move from cathode to anode. So it requires to have some high voltage capabilities and low resistance and so forth. The data science, as we've mentioned, that needs to give us information about the requirements for the artificial intelligence and the machine learning of all the vast data that is coming from the thousands of batteries that are being recycled. And then, of course, you have the structure of the cell, how it's being built, and then the electronics around it, how you manage it. So just to give you an example of what these innovative materials can do, you always have this problem that the material itself is getting distorted, and there are problems with the structure. It's getting into cracks, and if you can see in the bottom, once you go through the cycling, you get the formation of the material is getting very non-structured. In order to enable it and to protect it, we are doing something that is called 3D binders that are like polymers that are self-healing, that allow the cracks in the material to actually heal itself in order to enable it to go through more and more recycling as you move forward. Inside the car, it looks different because you have to stack together many of these modules in order to have a full pack. So our project with Daimler, for example, which is one of our lead investors, is to introduce hundreds of these modules into the pack. Each one of them can charge in 5 minutes, and all of them together also, of course, are charged in parallel in 5 minutes. So it's a question of the charging station and the infrastructure that should allow it. And BP, British Petroleum, is also one of our key investors, is working on the entire ecosystem and infrastructure that would allow this high power to be introduced into the vehicle. So StoreDot is only focused on the key element, which is the missing part, is the battery. All the rest is done by our ecosystem partners and investors. So we work on the backward compatibility with the AC charging at home, which will always be slow, but also on what is required from each gas station that is now becoming a charging station. And BP has 18,000 of these stations that over the next decade, they're going to repurpose in order to be charging stations. So just to give you an example of what can be done with a 750 kilowatt station, and this is the prototype that we are currently experimenting with. So if you look even on a Tesla, in 5 minutes you would get 232 miles. This is, of course, without taking into account some losses on the heat, on the network, and so forth. But theoretically, we are aiming for roughly 230 miles that you would get in 5 minutes in a car like a Tesla. This is our goal, and this is what we are going to demonstrate in a couple of years. As I mentioned, we are also working on a production facility. We call it the 1 giga. We are only starting with 1 gigawatt hour. 1 gigawatt hour is roughly 30,000 cars per year, but it's going to scale. We're already designing it for 10 gigawatt hour, which is 300,000 cars per year. So this will scale. We are currently raising 400 million for that facility. We are looking at several locations, preferably in the US. So basically the future, you know, people say fast charging will happen. It's already here. We are demonstrating it in our labs. This technology is something that was considered impossible just until few years, even 5 years ago, when we first presented it. People say that this will never happen. But the world of batteries is changing. Prices are coming down, and you will be able to charge your car in just a few minutes. Our grandchildren will not believe that there was a time that we actually charged overnight. This will be something that will be really archaic, and people won't imagine that this was even possible. And one more thing that I want to stress about the corporate culture that we are operating in, and you can look at our website. It is very important for us to give back to the community because we are working on green energy and the planet. We are also donating our options, same way that we are giving options to our employees. We are giving options back to the community through public service venture funds like Tmura and other efforts that we do in order to make sure that the entire community is being supported. Thank you very much.